Okay, so today I am bringing you Death of a Salesman, a play by Arthur Miller, and I am going to give you the existentialist point of view. Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller is a short but complicated play. There's a lot of themes going on in it. It takes place in 1949, maybe 1948. The play came out in 1949. It is a reflection of American society post-World War II, which in the United States was actually a prosperous time, at least compared to the rest of Europe. The rest of Europe was still being rebuilt with the Marshall Plan, and countries such as England were still under rationing and austerity. So American society seemed overabundant in food and opportunities and wealth. And this post-war America is idealized. We still idealize it. When Donald Trump says "Make America Great Again," I don't know exactly what he's talking about, but I have a feeling it's, I've always kind of thought this, that he's talking about a post-war America with a GI Bill where people, soldiers were allowed to get college degrees by paying no money. It was affordable to buy houses. The highway system had already been built and was being expanded. A lot of things in place in post-war America were started by FDR and to get us out of the Depression, and then it kind of continued after World War II, and we were in fact the country with plenty to share. And unfortunately, we also were in the middle of a Cold War with the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union, well, they were doing a lot less well than the United States. I don't know if this is necessarily due to capitalism. It's actually a complicated thing to actually even talk about because you had two different ideologies, one capitalistic, one communistic, and to compare the two seems a little, I don't know, I would say tone deaf. But just to let you know, there was a lot going on in post-war America, post-World War II America, and it was generally considered a time of great wealth. So the play focuses on an aging salesman, Willy Loman, who has two sons who have failed to find success. And he has a wife that wants harmony for her family. So let's delve into that a little bit more. So the patriarch of the family, the main character is Willy Loman, and he is losing his grip on reality. He dreams even while driving and gets into car wrecks. He crashed into a bridge. He almost ran over somebody. And his work has been downgraded. So he used to get an hourly wage plus commission, and he was downgraded to strictly commission. And because of this, because he's working on a strictly commission basis, he's struggling to pay his bills. He has his mortgage payment, which is almost paid off. He has loans out on appliances, also almost paid off. So all of his work in building material wealth is almost paid off at the beginning and even towards the end of the play. So he's close, very close to achieving what he thinks in his heart is the American dream, and that's getting the house with a white picket fence, the loving family, the loving wife, and a good retirement to look forward to. But at the moment when the play opens, he's struggling to pay his bills because now he's strictly commission. And he's finding it difficult to sell to people. He's finding it more difficult as an aging salesman than as a young salesman. And there is a reference to a past lover. He probably had many lovers, honestly. He was on the road a lot. But he imagines an old past lover putting on new stockings that he gave her, while his wife mends her old stockings, while he is imagining his past lover. So definitely some, I would say, marital strife going on there. Now, who are his kids? We get 2 kids, which I actually think have names that are ridiculous. Maybe they might have been more popular or well received in 1949 when this play came out, but now they seem strangely out of place in our modern society. But one son is named Biff. He's the older brother, and he has failed to live up to his father's expectations. He went out west, we're told Texas, Arizona maybe, basically the Southwest, and he worked on ranches. And he aspired, or at least aspires, to owning his own ranch. And he was once a football star in high school, so there was a lot of expectations out of Biff, which I think is an awful name to give a character. And then we have Happy. I'm not sure what to think about that name. And it doesn't say if it's short for anything or if it was a nickname, but that's just the kid's name. And he has gone into business in New York City, but without stunning success. He's kind of a vague character, and he represents the lie. I think that's probably the appropriate word. He represents the lie of the American dream. And so now let's talk about the matriarch. So we have Linda Lohman, and she has been pushed as an important character in Arthur Miller's work. She's been put forward as a very dynamic character in Arthur Miller's whole oeuvre of plays and writings. I don't agree with that. The first time I read Death of a Salesman, I'm like, I don't like Linda. And the second time I read Death of a Salesman, I'm like, I don't like Linda. And now I'm on my 3rd reading of Death of a Salesman, and it's not that I don't like her, it's just that I don't think she's very 3-dimensional. But you read a lot of criticism about the play, and it seems like they sort of elevate Linda Lohman as into this like almost feminist character. But she's very materialistic. She's supportive of her husband and children, very supportive of her husband and children. So there's nothing wrong with that, but she's also very materialistic. She wants the mortgage paid off. She wants the appliances paid off. She wants her husband to be a success in business. But who is she? Other than wanting her husband to do well, other than wanting her children to do well, other than wanting the mortgage paid off and the appliances paid off, who is she exactly? I don't know. It's unclear from the play. I don't detect a distinct personality in Linda other than she seems supportive of anyone that she's in contact with. So if she's talking to Willy Lohman, then she is completely in support of him. If she's talking to Biff or Happy, she is in support of them, but she's also in support of the patriarch, Willy Lohman, as well. So maybe she's a good character because she's so supportive of everybody around her. I just doubt her overall interest. I don't find her to be a very interesting character. There's a lot she could have said and done during the course of the play that might have made it a lot more interesting, and it would have given her identity besides being mother and wife. But she doesn't stand out that way, and I don't know if Arthur Miller intended her to be written in that play. I know in his play The Crucible, he has women that are very distinctive and strong, but how could you not write a play about the Salem witch trials and have women who are outspoken and strong when you're talking about the Salem witch trials? So my judgment about Linda Lohman is questionable, and I don't think she is the best written character of any of Arthur Miller's plays. So who is Arthur Miller? I probably, and maybe a little unfairly, posted a picture of Marilyn Monroe instead of his picture. I probably should have posted his picture if you wanted to know about Arthur Miller. But the first thing that I ever knew about Arthur Miller was that he was married to Marilyn Monroe. This is before I read any of his plays or was even interested in plays. I knew he was married to Marilyn Monroe. And for the longest time, that's what I knew him as. He had other marriages and he had children from other marriages. Marilyn Monroe actually converted to Judaism when she married Arthur Miller. And interestingly enough, her movies were banned in Egypt because of her conversion to Judaism. Arthur Miller grew up and lived in New York City and died in 2005, so not that long ago. He wrote several successful plays. Death of a Salesman premiered in 1949, so he probably started writing it in 1947, 1948. Still very much after post-World War II America. He faced some complications that might be a euphemism, actually. He faced a lot of problems. So after The Crucible premiered, he got wrapped up in the McCarthy trials for being a communist. And so that was actually the second fact I learned about Arthur Miller before I actually read any of his plays. I knew he was brought before McCarthy, and I knew he was accused by McCarthy for being a communist. And I knew this because of The Crucible. And The Crucible was required reading in my high school AP English class. And I had that very much in mind, his being identified as a communist. I had that very much in mind when I read The Crucible in my English class. And I think it gave me a little bit of respect, actually, for Arthur Miller, I would say. Okay, so what is the bare plot of Death of a Salesman? There's going to be some spoiler alerts, so hopefully you're watching this, either you've already read the play and you don't care, or you haven't read the play and you still don't care if I tell you how it turns out. But Willy Loman's, the patriarch, Willy Loman's sons come home. Both sons are unsuccessful and are trying to find their way in the world, even though they are no longer young boys. They are in their 30s, they're at least 30. Willy is expected to drive on long trips for a commission-only job, and he's gotten himself into accidents. He complained to his wife that he almost ran over somebody, and he started talking to himself. And in fact, in Act 1, Biff and Happy are in their rooms, and they're talking about their father, and they overhear him talking to himself. So, in a psychological perspective, or using a psychological term, we would kind of call that dissociating. So he's still in the present, but he's not really in the present, and he's talking to past ghosts, past experiences, people he's known in the past, people that are not present at that moment. And he's also confusing the past with the present. He's blending the two. Biff and Happy make plans. Biff says they should buy a ranch and become cowboys, basically. And to Biff, that's the ultimate American dream, the wide expanse of land, you know, owning a piece of property, a large piece of property, managing that property. This is Biff's dream. But, I'm sorry, this is Biff's dream. But Happy, who is working at a company, thinks that he should be a salesman like his dad. But he wants to be a successful salesman, unlike his father. And then we have Linda, the matriarch, who takes the monetary problems that she is experiencing due to Willy going on a straight commission job. She is taking these monetary problems in stride and continues to support, without any questioning, Willy Loman. Willy ends up committing suicide before all his bills are paid off, including his mortgage, and very few people show up to his funeral. Very few people. So imagine your own funeral, and you have your wife and 2 children, and maybe one other person show up to your funeral. Was this a successful life? It could be. Maybe you had strong relationships with those people, and that's all that matters. But something tells me that Willy, in his pursuit of the American dream, would not have been happy with so few people showing up at his funeral. And during the funeral, a relative makes a speech about the absurd expectations of being a salesman. And then Happy decides to be the success his dad wanted. And Biff, we assume at the end of the play, he just goes back out west to find his own brand of freedom. But it's important to know that Happy chooses his father's path of being a salesman, and he's dead set on becoming a more successful salesman than his father. And then we have Biff, who goes out west, or who leaves for out west, and tries to make it. Maybe someday he owns a ranch, and he has land, and he achieves some form of success on his own terms. So what does this have to do with existentialism? Well, you know, some people reading this play think that the American dream, it means that the American dream is dead, or that it never existed. I might go a step further and say the American dream is a prison. It threatens our authenticity, it places undue pressure on us, and deprives us of happiness. So, many of you might have had this issue where you're a teenager, or you're in your 20s, and you're talking to your parents about college, or not going to college, or going to trade school. Either way, you're talking about your future. And you want to do one thing, but your parents say, well, you're not going to make enough money doing that, so maybe you should just go to law school. You're not going to succeed at doing this, so maybe you should just do this. And a lot of times, people listen. Kids listen to their parents. Kids listen to the adults in their lives. And just because they're adults doesn't mean that they know everything, and it doesn't mean that they know anything about your own authenticity. And if existentialism is about any one thing, I would say it's about the pursuit of authenticity. You need to do what's going to make you happy and what's going to fulfill you, regardless of whether or not it provides you with the trappings of material success. So Willy Loman probably would have been happy, very happy, and may not have actually committed suicide if both of his sons were successful businessmen and had big houses and a wife and children, and were very much living what he thought was the American dream. What we learn in the play is that no character is free. Even Biff, who works on ranches in the West, is not free. He is not free, even though he's working out in the open lands, rounding up cattle, working with horses. You would think that would be the ultimate freedom. He is not free because he does not meet his father's expectations, and he wants to meet his father's expectations. Willy, the patriarch, mythologizes people, and because he does that, he imprisons them in their own reality. His sons are a disappointment, and so his sons feel like failures. Linda Lohman, whom I've already stated I have questions about, her success as a female character in the play, but she seems to love her husband, but she's also victim to Willy's expectations, as demonstrated by him acquiring a lover. We only know about the one lover that he acquired at some point during his business experiences, his time as a salesman, but he could very well have had multiple lovers, and Linda knows nothing about this. So even she is punished by Willy Loman's own lack of authenticity. What we know at the end of the play is that Biff and Happy both share in their father's skewed optimism. And this is a quote from the play. "What's the mystery? The man knew what he wanted and went out and got it. Walked into a jungle and comes out at the age of 21, and he's rich. The world is an oyster, but you don't crack it open on a mattress." All right. So we got another quote about being a success in life. So you're supposed to walk into a jungle and come out with a pile of gold at 21, and you're rich. And then you have the oyster comment. Well, you're not going to crack it open on a mattress, which means you're not going to access the American dream through laziness or sitting on your mattress. Or in any way sleeping whatsoever. That is the probably the underpinning of this whole play. You can achieve the American dream by laziness, but then you have Willy, who works hard and has worked hard his whole life as a salesman, and up until his last few months on Earth, he was a straight commission salesperson. And he was suffering, he couldn't pay his bills, and he was not meeting his own version of the American dream. And he was by no means trying to crack an oyster open on the mattress. He was out knocking on doors, he was out selling in businesses, because I think he did business-to-business sales. So he was by no means sitting on the mattress waiting for success to come to him. He was out there chasing it, and he wasn't able to find it. And I think that probably says more about the American dream than anything in the play. That one quote that I read to you, and then you take that quote and compare it to Willy Loman. You are You may never find the American dream no matter how hard you work. Does this mean the American dream is a lie? Or is it an impossible, optimistic ideal that makes it so incredibly difficult to obtain? So what's the takeaway? So if you're trying to read Death of a Salesman to reflect on your own life, I would say seek your own authenticity. Find out what really excites you. Find out what makes you happy. Define your own happiness. If your own happiness is digging clams on the beach and selling them at the farmer's market every day in Monterey Bay in California, then by all means do that. There's a lot of job snobbery that goes on in America, probably other countries too, but I'm only speaking to about America because we talk a lot about the American dream. We just had the first Democratic debates the other night, and we're having more tonight. And nearly every candidate was talking about the American dream. Also, the American dream in a post-war World War II society, after we have recovered from the Great Depression, I mean, it's sexy and it's interesting. It's like, yes, if I only work hard enough, if I only do the right thing, I can achieve unlimited happiness and I can pay for all the material goods that I want. The important part is to not chase other people's dreams. So if you want to be a game developer, if you love playing video games, and you want to be a video game developer, you want to make video games, but your parents say, go to law school, but you hate the law, then I would say don't go into law school. Fight it with all you can. You need to define your own happiness, and you can't chase down other people's dreams. You also need to discard materialism, which is a tough one in American society, since that is what we are about. And it's not just America. I mean, there's plenty of countries in East Asia and in Europe who are truly about materialism too, acquiring certain products, certain name brands. But you really gotta get out of that, hamster run of materialism, because you are not going to achieve happiness by acquiring Chanel or Donna Karan or Calvin Klein or anything with a massive name brand. You're not going to find happiness by doing that. Happiness comes from someplace deeper, and it usually starts by doing something daily that you enjoy and that you can actually make money off of to a certain extent, at least enough to pay your bills and survive. And then the last takeaway from Death of a Salesman: there's no American dream. There is no singular American dream. There are only individual dreams. So figure out your dream. Forget about what other people are talking about, saying. Forget about what Twitter says, Instagram, Facebook. Forget about what the politicians say in debates or what current presidents say. Forget about all of that. Find your own happiness, find your own authenticity, and find your own individual dream. And once you do that, quite honestly, once you find an individual dream, it then becomes an American dream, because you are, in fact, American. If you're watching this and you're not American, then you are achieving the English dream or the Danish dream. It sounds weird to say things like that, but other countries have dreams too, and they have an idea of how they would like life to play out. But it's important that first you achieve the individual dream. So make sure, as you read the play Death of a Salesman, think of your own life and think of your own dream.